But yeah, I mean, you want to create places where it's an easy entry for people. And if that means just joining a group of people that have a similar commonality, and then those relationships build, it just goes from there. Everybody just needs the right starting point. That's for them.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Salty Pastor Podcast, a podcast dedicated to helping you learn how to grow your faith and your critical thinking skills. We are doing a very special end of the year celebration here on the Salty Pastor. I am a thorn trapped between two roses. We have on with us Mrs. Dayna Mitchell, our Adult Ministries Director, and Mrs. Emma Fulmer, our FH Kids Director. And you may be wondering, but where are the Salty Pastors? And I will say these ladies can get quite salty, but that's not the reason we brought them on today. We brought them on because ultimately the Salty Pastor podcast is all about looking towards the upstream views and perpetuating that. And Foothills is an upstream focused church, and our upstream focused church can't do what it does without these two very important parts of the ministry in adults and groups. And obviously our kids are our future. And so we thought, what better way to wrap up the year here on the Salty Pastor than bringing in the people that are spearheading these movements, who are doing the groundwork out in the church to help perpetuate what Pastor Doug, Pastor Harv, what Zach and I talk about every week on this podcast, which is focusing on the upstream and really buying into and understanding why you believe things. So welcome, ladies. We had Miss Shadley Friesen on a couple weeks ago. She was the first woman to join us here on the Salty Pastor, and now it looks like we're having a takeover day. So why don't we just talk about how long you've been in ministry here at Foothills really quick, and then we'll kind of talk about what you guys have been doing this year and how it's been helping the upstream ministry we've been focused on. So Dayna, you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah. First of all, that's big shoes to fill following Shadley Friesen.
I know, right?
Yeah. The bar has set. Let's see. I've been in ministry full time for eight years now at Foothills, 10 total, because this is my second time on staff. So quite a bit of time.
Awesome. 10 years. And then Emma?
I'm at a year and a half. So I came on in COVID, June 2020.
That was a weird job choice.
It was. God led me here. So I just jumped in 2 feet and, joined your awesome team. So I feel very blessed to just be a part of the team and be a part of Foothills.
Mm-hmm. Well, we are so excited to have you. I will say, as a personal reference, you are two of my favorite people here on staff. So don't let anyone else know, though. Good thing this doesn't go out to the public or anything. But we just wanted to I talked with Pastor Harv, Pastor Doug, and we really thought it was important to share what you guys are doing because we see and hear from what they're doing a lot, but you guys are just as important in what we do here at Foothills. And so I want to kind of just break this down into talk about some of the biggest growths we've seen this year in your ministry and how that kind of relates to what we are consistently talking about here as far as focusing people's faith, understanding why they believe what they believe, and pushing that upstream ideology. Dayna, you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, my biggest role is coordinating and spearheading the small group ministry. And we have right around 80 small groups, right around 600
Just 80,
people.
It's fine, whatever.
I mean, it sounds really, really big, but still that's a small percentage of the adults that go to this church, So my vision is just to have more and more people in. And we did see a big jump. We had a 39% increase in adults joining a small group. So that was really great for the year. But yeah, it's just... We're a church of small groups. We're not a church with small groups. It's our main focus of what we do to grow adults in their faith because, those small groups of people, discipleship happens really well within that context because the church is the place where you can be from all different socioeconomic, statuses, political views, and this is the place where you can come together and have those safe conversations and learn from each other and push each other and it's a really great system. I mean, it was Jesus' system, so obviously it
pioneered
works, right?
it, and we're just trying to follow along, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's interesting, too, because we've seen growth in those during a time of COVID when we're supposed to be seeing people social distance and go home, be by yourself. It's not safe. And we saw growth. And I don't know that it was necessarily people being flippant about COVID, but it was a desire to, we kind of saw this cutting away of like things that you were committed to or things that you were constantly agreeing to that would have initially stopped you from being able to have time for small group maybe. And then you went, I'm starting to realize what's important in this time when we're panicking, right? Is that what you were getting from people?
Definitely that. And then just creativity. I feel like the people that were already bought in were willing to find any way to keep it going because, it was a scary time for so many people. And so they, like you said, wanted to lean into those things that give hope and give stability and that coming together. America's really great that when things get hairy is our time when we really come together. And so you could see that through the groups and then other people too. I think that COVID was a really beautiful thing in that it made people question, what they were believing, what they were putting stock in. And so I feel like more people were open to see like, okay, this is real and this is true and this is something that I can focus my life around. And so they leaned in to doing those kind of things where they maybe wouldn't have before.
So I mean, listeners of this podcast will know that I almost always close every single episode out challenging them to go have a conversation because just like most small groups, when I'm sitting here talking with Doug and we're having a conversation, we're doing it for all these people, but I'm learning every time him or Harv or Zach share something and we're having discussions about, well, what about this? What about that? Yeah. And it's growing my faith. It's growing my thinking skills. And one of the best ways to do that would be through a small group, wouldn't you say? Is that, have you heard stories of, people really being able to dial in why they believe it and what they're doing?
Yeah, I mean, that's, we have such a great group of small group leaders here at the church. I mean, these people are they really care. They really feed into, pour into the people who are in their groups, praying for them, coming alongside them. So that just relational component does that. That grows you, that shapes you. And then, just one of the sort of biggest successful things we do is writing those study questions that go along with the sermon and carrying what happens on Sunday throughout the week. And I've heard from small group leaders that those create really rich discussions. And so it's not just like you hear something on Sunday and then you don't think about it again until the next Sunday. It's like it gives you that midpoint in the year to like bring that home, the application questions like, okay, how does everything that we heard apply to my life and what am I going to do about it this week? And then just, I would get something different than Emma would get or that you would get. And so when people share all those different insights, it's like, oh, I didn't think of it that way. And it's pretty dynamic.
Well, and Doug's constantly talking about this upstream principle. It's the thing we've kind of taken this back half of the year and we're carrying forward into 2022 about the changes you make upstream will affect your downstream. And so people who commit to doing small groups, doing life together, discipling other people or being discipled, we see some pretty big changes in their lives, right?
Yeah.
And so we have so many different styles too. Like I think about, we make jokes a lot in the office about, well, only at Foothills do we have a small group that goes out shooting, like that's an Idaho thing. I doubt, Emma, you joined us you moved from California to Idaho. I doubt that was a big thing in your former church,
you would
right?
not have seen that, no.
And then we have young adult groups. We've got groups that go and play board games. We've got groups that just get together and they just have, kind of that traditional small group model. Yeah. But it doesn't have to be that, would you say? Like it's an ever evolving, people can get as creative or wild with it as they want.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, it just goes back to the perfection of the system that Jesus created, right? When he came and gathered each one of us, just like he came and gathered his disciples, they were all at different places and stages. And that's the beauty of small groups too, is that we have what I call an open market system where you can have a group for just about anything as long as it's legal is my only caveat.
So the gambling ring I was planning on starting was not going to be approved.
No, sorry. Unless we want to start a satellite campus in like Nevada or something.
Run it down to Nevada. Yeah. Somebody from Nevada call me. I have a great idea.
But yeah, I mean, you want to create places where it's an easy entry for people. And if that means just joining a group of people that have a similar commonality, and then those relationships build, it just goes from there. Everybody just needs the right starting point. That's for them.
And I think what I've always been inspired by you is you're not looking for this specific small group leader. Yeah. If you're feeling called to it, Dayna's wonderful to help support you. And she always talks about how some of the best leaders aren't teachers. They're not been like Christians the longest. Mm-hmm. She is really great at supporting people and just really coming alongside of you and inspiring you to start that small group.
Yeah, I think that can be, I mean, I think that's just in small groups too. Like even when I first started coming here, trying to figure out where I was going to get plugged in small group wise, even though I'm in ministry, I think I still have to be able to grow and work on my faith. I don't have it all figured out, that is for sure. But I think it's very easy, even just when I was asked to come on to ministry, this is my first ministry gig. Yeah. It's like there's definitely this feeling of not being worthy enough, or I'm too flawed to be in charge of other people's spiritual things.
They know?
Yeah. But I think the thing I've learned the most is we're not in charge of their spiritual growth. Right. Ultimately, we say it again and again on this podcast, and it's the same thing in FH Kids and the parents teaching their kids, and in the same thing with small groups is they're ultimately responsible for their own faith. All we can do is come alongside them, guide them, encourage them,
coach them,
but ultimately it's up to them. Right. And we're also just figuring it out on our own too. And we just happen to be, have spiritual gifts that allow us to help others do that. And we have the desire to do that. So I think that's really great. Is there anything else that's been happening because small groups is one of your primary focuses, but as a whole, I know we've done a couple of events this year, like the women's event with, I can't remember their name.
Nights of Unity?
Yep,
Nights of Unity.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a huge gathering of different women from all across the valley, which was really amazing. There was testimony shared, encouragement, and stuff like that. Any other kind of big stuff going on in adult ministry over the last year that's really kind of helped make that upstream impact that started making some differences in people's lives, seen and unseen?
Yeah.
Right?
That's a good example. And then we kind of restructured how we do women's ministry and formed some new teams so that more women could feel empowered to go out and do ministry or be a part of it or shape it the way that they want to. And so that was fun because it was kind of just like me sitting back and then bringing all the women together that want to be a part, and then just see how it dynamically shifted and created these teams was a lot of fun. But men's ministry too. I mean, those guys had an amazing men's retreat with
so many people up there.
Yeah, which was so many more than the previous year. I mean, obviously it was a COVID year, but even the year before that. Yeah. So I think that was just really good for the lives of the men of the church. And honestly, if we just only did one thing right and it was men's ministry, I would be so okay with that because it's just so powerful when men are growing in their faith because then they're leading their family accordingly. The kids are following suit. And so, props to the men of the church they just do discipleship well. They're committed to it. They take it very seriously. My husband's a part of it. Emma's husband's a part of it. And I've seen, the spiritual growth in my own husband, your husband, and it's just, it's a cool thing to see.
It's great to see it in the church. You can actually walk around and physically see it.
Yeah.
My favorite is Dan Frisky's small group that meets in the atrium and it's just out there.
Right.
I don't know if I could have my small group meet, kind of not on stage, but they're just showing off their faith and really they meet every week and it's just inspiring because now they've done it for so long. You kind of look over and you're like, oh, there they are, and they it's really awesome.
Yeah, it is. And he's a great example of just a man that's just so ministry minded. He's always out there. He's always available. I mean, he's the kind of guy that you can bring if a man comes with questions of the church or he's struggling, it's awkward for me to try to engage in that conversation, but to have somebody like Dan that's out there and available and say, hey, no, this is the guy you need to talk to, and just be fully confident that he's going to have a good word for him, point him in the right direction, scoop him up. I mean, all of those men's leaders are like that. They just really get it, and I'm super proud of them.
Well, and I would say that, typically in a lot of churches, the men's portion is sort of like an afterthought, or it's like, they just do like barbecues and stuff. Like they're not, and you can't say that about every church. We're not in every church, and I'm sure there's plenty of churches that do men's ministry well. But I will say that our men's ministry feels unique in from a lot of churches I've been in. That again, they do take it seriously. They have, Doug has just started verbalizing the Upstream idea, but it's been kind of an ethos of Foothills for a while of where if you want to make your marriage better, if you want to make your family better, if you're a single man. Pointing at myself for those who are listening.
Single ladies.
And you want to just better yourself so that when it is time for you to be a father, husband, etc., it starts with your walk with Jesus. And I think that's so important because we're not here to be a quick fix for, we do have some things to help ease symptoms. Like if you are having marital issues, we have a family ministries thing. If you have family rearing problems with your kids, then we have those solutions. But ultimately, almost all those solutions come back to a point where they say, your walk with Jesus is going to set you up to fix or maintain or improve all of these other things. Yeah. So I love that that's our focus. I love that our men take that seriously. And then I love that the opportunity to create a small group based on whatever you are interested in is there. It's not you're not the group czar sitting high on a throne saying, well, only these kinds of groups and only these times are available. If someone comes to you and you said it just has to be legal, which I mean, that's a little rules lawyery, but whatever. You're open to helping them grow and flourish. So we just appreciate that. That's really great. I love that. Emma, let's pivot really quick. So the adults are well managed. They're taken care of. Steve Botsford has the teenagers growing and discipling, but you have an abundance of children that run into our building every week, excited to learn more about Jesus. So talk to me about what they're learning or the growth that is happening, because ultimately we're kind of busting at the seams in some of these classes. We are.
I'm kind of a broken record at Huddle because I talk about how we need more rooms each week. But I could use another room. It's exciting. We started with just the nursery open to moms that wanted to come in during COVID. Everything was kind of scaled back, and now we are full capacity, all 10 rooms, gym, all the things. We use all the things. We have an amazing volunteer base, and I feel so blessed. We could not do FH Kids without them. They show up each week and just really care about the kids and love them and want to teach them about Jesus. So it's a blessing.
Well, and we've, in the last year, there's been a couple different new changes to kind of continue to align this with this Upstream thing. You've encouraged and asked parents to serve in FH Kids at least once a quarter, if not more, because when you explain it to me, and this makes total sense, I'm not a parent, but it makes sense. You should be visible in helping teach your kids and other kids about Jesus and their walk in faith. If you are just treating it as a daycare, basically, where you just drop them off so you don't have to worry about it for a couple hours, then they're not going to see that you care about their growth, right?
Kids are smart. They know what's important to you. So they see you live your life all day long. They know, wow, that's important to my dad because of the priorities you make. So when you make being in their classroom a priority, they're like, whoa, me learning about Jesus, this is important. My dad's in here, my dad's, talking to these other kids and to me and helping me do the craft and supporting. And what's awesome is we have such incredible teachers like Shadley that know what they're doing, take control, and the parents just get to come in and just support that and just experience it as well. So I know I have missed out on certain stories of the Bible when I was growing up, and being in those classrooms, I'm like, oh, okay, and it's just a non-judgmental, really awesome, inspiring space. So I feel really blessed to not only have teachers that, love what they're doing, but also have parents coming in, experiencing that with their kids.
Well, and I think you could see that same kind of hesitancy you see in small groups where it's like, well, I'm just new to my faith. I had an experience. I think, I believe that Jesus is this guy, but I should not be teaching other children. There's people that come to it late in the game. They're like, I didn't even get any of these Bible stories. Maybe I grew up, my family didn't believe in it at all, and all I know is, there was a Jesus guy. That's the extent, right? It's like, that's not the expectation. You're not coming in expected to know all the answers or be able to,
Right.
transform these kids' lives through 3 words. Like, you're going to be transforming their lives just by showing that you care enough to be there.
Right. And that you want to learn.
Yeah.
Because that's where God takes over, where you're in that feeling of, I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
That's when he gets to step in and give you space for that and to give you confidence. So it's been really awesome to see parents continuing to just jump in, and you could tell they're a little nervous, and it's okay. And we just support them and love them. And they've been coming back, and we're just so excited because we've really been focusing on it being intentional. That was the word Shadley and I wanted to, use all year long. And that definitely sums up what we used with, Coming Over to Gospel Project.
Which is the new curriculum
Which
you're
is our
using.
new curriculum. It's a 3-year program, and it teaches nursery to 5th grade the Bible at their stages. So, nursery would be here with learning the basic parts of the story, and then the 2 and 3-year-olds are learning a little bit more, 4 and 5-year-olds a little bit more. But what's so cool is when you're leaving church on Sunday, everybody learned the same lesson. So when you're driving home, which a lot of ministry happens on the way home, meltdowns and ministry.
Meltdowns in ministry, all in the car on the way home.
Either you had breakfast and you're still good, or you didn't, and that's another story. But parents always ask, "What'd you learn?" And before, when we were on a different curriculum, our kids were learning different things, so it kind of got disconnected. What's great about now is a 3-year-old could start the conversation about a basic thing that they learned, and then the 2nd grader could be like, "Oh yeah, us too," and this, and this. So that discipleship kind of happens naturally.
Well, and it makes it easier for the parents too, because you're not trying to remember all the details from one story and for
Right.
one thing to be like, okay, I need to engage my child on this to remember how that story happened, because they probably did not read it that day.
Right.
And then the other kid learned this, and then they're like starting to ask questions. Well, why did Zacchaeus climb a tree? I don't remember.
Right.
I don't know.
And we're giving out handouts because the parents might not have known that story. So
Right.
then it helps them engage and be like, oh, wow. And their kids are teaching them things that they didn't know. So it's really beautiful. I really enjoyed the curriculum. We started it in the summer, so it's about 6 months. So
Okay.
it's been
And
awesome.
we're here for another 2.5 years.
Yeah, I know. That part kind of makes me a little nervous, but diving in. I'm an organizer. I like new things all the time.
New things, constantly changing. Well, so talk to me a little bit about, you get the opportunity and the blessing and probably the overwhelming nerves of teaching these kids about Jesus every week. Have you seen any real changes in I just think about what I get to do when I volunteer with the youth group. It's like when you start kind of seeing the light bulb turn on,
Yes.
it's kind of a thing that you're like, oh my gosh, that's not me, that's God. But
Right.
I'm here to watch that.
Yes.
Talk to me about kind of that vibe you get when you get to see these kids that start kind of getting it.
The kids getting it actually happens more at home, I've noticed as a parent, and it's really not even in front of you. If you're a parent and you kind of know if the siblings are talking, that's when they find that's when you see that the concept that they got
Stuck.
it, because they're teaching it to their siblings. So Sam would say something like, I don't know, ask Stella a question. She's like, well, that Jesus gave you that. And I'm like, oh, I didn't teach you that, Mrs. Friesen taught you that or whatever. So it's really cool to see it out in their life. And I think that happens with us in small groups, and you just kind of see that growth in the classroom, but also it's really in the day-to-day where you really see them make those connections and teach one another, which is really sweet.
We had a moment like that on Sunday. Lucy had a rough day on Sunday, as my friends in ministry got to witness.
Did she have breakfast?
I think so. Lucy rarely goes without breakfast. But she had a moment after where she, we had an incident at home, and she ran to her room and she slammed the door, and I came in and what's going on? It was the worst Sunday ever. And I'm like,
Aww.
Really? Tell me about it. So she shared about, being embarrassed in front of the film crew and all that. But she goes, the only good thing was I really liked the Bible lesson that we learned on Sunday. And I was like, okay, well, let's focus on what was great. Tell me what was about that. And then she just explained the whole Passover, and they put blood on the door frame, and then those little children weren't killed. And it's like, this is really deep stuff that we're talking about, but
it's not sugar coated.
No.
I pray for our volunteers and our teachers, because I'm like, good luck to you today. But Elizabeth made the connection first, and Mrs. Friesen had her come up on stage and explain it to the other kids. So that's another really awesome layer, is seeing it in the kids, and maybe they can explain it to their peers better than you might be able to.
Right.
And being able to notice that and then call them up and give them the confidence to do that. So,
well, and we see Pastor Doug, Pastor Harv, and Zach quite often. We're talking about, what they're learning at school, whether they're doing public, private, whatever. There's influences from the philosophical ideas and stuff that shape who we are as adults and who are currently shaping the kids.
Right.
And so you are uniquely positioned where you're sharing through the volunteers, the teachers, the parents who are learning from Pastor Doug and Pastor Harv on Sundays. They're teaching them a different way to view the world, right? That's not just, well, if you see one wrong thing, then you throw the whole thing out, or, everything's sad and miserable and you have nothing to be joyful about. But there's Jesus. And, it's so amazing that Lucy's like, yes, my life was really hard today, but man, Bible story was like a highlight. And it wasn't like a joyful story.
No.
I mean, it is, but it is, but it isn't. It's an intense story, but she still latched onto that. And so, again, we're setting them up with these upstream principles at even such a young age, because these kids are not overly old to be successful later on and be like, yeah, I know you're saying that, the news is saying that the world sucks, but, God did this really cool thing for me. So it's like I have things to look forward to, and they're being taught a different way of viewing the world, these biblical worldviews of going, yeah, all my friends say that this is the way we should do things, but, that's not what I learned in church. And these people, these parents that have been in my life, these men and women that have come and spent time with me, I trust them more than I trust the random person on TikTok to give me my beliefs. And it's like, I grew up, I shared this with you guys the other day. I grew up without a dad, and some of my biggest lessons as a man came from other men in my church growing up saying, I believe in you. I believe in what God taught me and has done in me enough to give it to you and share time and inspire you and teach you. It's like my youth pastor taught me how to shave and like different stuff like that, because he thought it was important to instill that. And we see that in the parents. We see that in people who are going out and discipling. I mean, the volunteers are basically discipling these little ones up.
Yes.
And they're taking the time to invest in them and not just be like, oh yeah, kids ministry is just like a playground that's, they do have a lot of fun. They have got bounce houses and other things, but it's like you in your ministry have decided we're not just going to be a daycare center with play toys and stuff.
Right.
Our focus is.
Well, the connection, what we saw change in COVID was when we went to school, the teacher would be in the front of the room teaching, and then on a special day, we'd get to watch a video. Like it was like, oh, screen day. Well, that's all changed. It's all screens now. And now the novelty is a teacher standing up on the stage and talking to them and knowing their names. A big part of my ministry is just giving kids hugs on Sunday mornings and just being a reliable person in their life, that the same people every Sunday know their name, care about them, asked if, they needed prayer, followed up with them. The follow-up is huge. Just like, wow, I belong somewhere. And I think people struggle with feeling that connection and feeling wanted and also missed.
Yeah.
And the fact that we have the same teachers each week talking, seeing them and being like, oh, like I always give Georgia a hug. Like every time I see Georgia, I'm like, yay, a Georgia hug, because, it makes a difference in my life and in hers, and just being a part of something. And I think that's why people love Foothills so much, because we are smaller and we do care about one another, and we want to see others succeed. And we're, Foothills family.
Foothills family.
Yep.
Do you guys have any other big thoughts that you want to share? We're kind of wrapping up. We've got a few minutes left, but is there anything, big blessings or things that have happened in your ministry over the last year that have just really made a big impact or difference, or things that you think the audience of the Salty Pastor should know about what you guys have been doing here?
I think it's just important for people to understand, we have a goal, and it's for everybody that comes with it, whether it's a child or student ministry or an adult, that our goal for you is for you to mature in your faith, and everything we do is to try to create an environment where you can do that. I think that we live in the world where, we have so much access to so much information and so many talking heads out there that we end up outsourcing our discipleship, You can watch all the mega pastors from across the U.S. and don't get me wrong, I love, Joyce Meyer, but we end up outsourcing that and we forget that there's somebody to the right of us or to the left of us or in our small group that has something that we need and we have something to offer too. And so my goal is just to really wrap my head around that mindset going into 2022 so that I can pour that out into our small group leaders and they can, feel equipped and ready to pour into, I have something. I call our small group leaders the pastors of their living room. You're the pastor of your living room. So, own that and pour into your people and pray for them and come alongside them. And it's really great how they meet each other's needs and help each other move or help each other grieve when they've lost someone. And so I'm just excited about taking that farther and going deeper in that next year.
I'm excited to just have fun. We're going to have a great week. We're getting all joy-filled.
Mm-hmm.
We just got through Christmas last week and we're getting ready for the new year.
Yes.
And it's just we're prepping for all of the great exciting things that are happening.
I know. Yeah. It's gonna be awesome.
It's gonna be a good year.
I'm excited.
I just really thank you guys. This is, we're wrapping up 2021. It definitely wasn't 2020. It had a lot less doom and gloom, but ultimately that was a choice we made. And as Pastor Doug talked about during the Christmas Eve services, joy is a choice. Mm-hmm. You have to choose to be joyful and choose what you believe in. And these ladies that have joined me today are choosing to be in ministry and choosing to pour themselves out to help you and your family, whether from birth to death, grow and mature so that they can better know Jesus. And that's what our goal here at Foothills is ultimately we are focused on discipleship. We care about your relationship with Jesus. We can't live the relationship for you. We can't do it. You can't outsource it. You can't trust that we're going to figure it out for you. Ultimately, it's your journey and we want you to go through it, but we are going to be right alongside you, cheering you on, giving you as many resources and encouragement and celebrate the wins and grieve in the sorrow, but ultimately it's yours. And we as a team here at Foothills, as the Salty Pastor Podcast, and ultimately as the Big C Church are focused on that for you guys. So we hope that you guys have an amazing rest of your week, celebrate responsibly in the new year, and just make plans for how you're going to grow your faith and grow your skills and understandings of your walk with Jesus this coming year. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and we'll see you on Thursday for our next podcast.
Thank you, Jesse.
Thanks, Jess.